Brigadier General Carr, Mr. Mahoney, Colonel Chickalese, family, friends. I want to thank you for taking time from your busy schedules to be here with us today. I know that some of you have taken several days to be here, and Mary and I are quite humbled that you made such a long trip. We hope that at the end of the weekend you will not be disappointed.
What's the light go on the
I certainly never thought that I'd be in the Army long enough to give an actual retirement speech. I thought I'd do a few years, then get out and get on with my life. It's funny how things don't always work out as you think. As a lieutenant, I often heard my peers in Germany saying to the captains of the battalion, "How do you know when it's time to get out?" The frequent response was, "You'll know it's time when it stops being fun." Well, for me, it really never stopped being fun. And so here I am, a little bit more than a day away from my mandatory retirement date. And as I'm sure everyone in ODCI can attest, I'm still having fun. But I have to be honest, I never intended to join the Army. When I arrived on the St. Bonaventure University campus as a freshman, I didn't know I had joined ROTC. I had simply enrolled in a one-credit course called Ranger Training. The elective brochure described this course as a class that did outdoor adventurous activities. That certainly caught my attention. The choice for an elective was either take Ranger Training or a Latin class. Like that was I soon found myself taking PT tests, dressing in BDUs, rappelling out of a helicopter, and learning under the mentorship of a great man, Captain Steve Ellis. I was also surrounded by other cadets: Jim, Rick, Tony, Dizzy, Laz, JR, Wild Bill, and Pat, just to name a few. These cadets and I became, and remain to this day, thick as thieves. We pushed each other as hard as we could when it came to our Army training. Academics, not so much. We were a small but extremely tight group, and because of the camaraderie and sense of purpose that we developed on campus 30 years ago, I told myself, if this is what it means to be in the Army, then sign me up. Well, 28 years have gone by in the blink of an eye, and here I am at the sunset of my career. As often is quoted, life's a journey, not a destination. For me, the lessons learned along the way are what made this journey so great. I'd like to share a few of those lessons with you. Most of them may not be earth-shattering, but I want you to pay particular attention to the last one. When I arrived in Aschaffenburg, Germany in June of 1987, I've got to be honest, I was petrified. The thought of being in charge of several $1 million worth of equipment and 35 men, to include a crusty old platoon sergeant, was very daunting. After meeting the battalion commander, I walked across the street to my new home as the platoon leader for 1st Platoon, Alpha Company, 1st of the 4th Infantry. As I walked in through the doors of the company, there was another platoon leader walking out, 2nd Lieutenant John Brow. He stopped me and gave me a sincere and friendly, "Welcome aboard, we've been waiting for you to arrive." And suddenly all my fears and apprehensions disappeared. The lesson I learned was that the Army is truly a team, and you will always have somebody on your left and right who will watch your back, and they're relying on you to watch theirs. My next assignment was with the 101st Airborne Division Air Assault. If I thought I was nervous joining a unit during peacetime, I had another thing coming when I joined the 1st of the 327. I joined the unit in Saudi Arabia in late January 1991, after the air war started, but before the ground war kicked off during Operation Desert Storm. Joining a unit this late in the game was certainly not my idea of an ideal situation. The battalion had trained and deployed together months before, and they were already a tight-knit group, and I was part of what was ghoulishly referred to as the Deadpool, a group of extras who could instantly replace a wounded or killed officer. When I arrived at the battalion TOC, the battalion commander, Lieutenant Colonel Frank Hancock, the warlord, took me to his tent to explain the tactical situation, our mission, and how it would be the lead platoon, the lead battalion for the lead brigade in the lead division. The pit in my stomach quickly grew from the size of a walnut to the size of a watermelon. Just then, the battalion command sergeant major walked into the tent. Lieutenant Colonel Hancock turned to him and said, "Sergeant Major Riley, this is Lieutenant Santini. He just was assigned to the battalion, and I'm explaining our mission to him." Without skipping a beat, the sergeant major said to me, "It's great to have you, Lieutenant Santini. Now that you're here, we can get the mission done." I swear the pit in my stomach instantly disappeared. The lesson learned was that by giving just a few encouraging words to a soldier, you can make him feel like he can conquer the world. On the 101st, I went on to what would be the most gratifying assignment in my career, being an ROTC instructor. I was blessed with a group of cadets who were incredibly eager, and I thoroughly enjoyed the assignment. However, over the years, I lost contact with most of my cadets. I sometimes questioned whether or not I truly had a positive impact on their lives. This question was answered about 2 years ago when I received a phone call out of the blue from a former cadet that I hadn't talked to in about 20 years. He said that he had tracked me down just to say thank you. That was a true measure of effectiveness for me and had a profound impact in how I define success in my career. The lesson learned was that your actions have an impact on other people's lives long after you think they will. For better or worse, you'll be remembered long after you have parted ways. Shortly after the ROTC assignment, I left active duty due to the drawdown in the 1990s. I was assigned to the Individual Ready Reserve. When people asked me, what's the IRR, I told them, in case of emergency, break glass, and I would be back on active duty. Well, the joke stopped being funny on September 11, 2001. On 9/11, I was working in Manhattan for a commercial moving and storage company with my two brothers, Dave and Tino. Our office was on 28th Street, right alongside the West Side Highway. In the days after 9/11, I'd go out during lunch and watch the constant stream of emergency vehicles as they drove down the West Side Highway on their way to Ground Zero for the recovery effort. These vehicles were from all over the country. As I watched this day after day, I came to the realization that I needed to get back in uniform and support our country during its time of need. The lesson I learned was that being able to look at myself in the mirror each morning was far more important than my own safety, comfort, and security. Soon, I was back on active duty and found myself in Pittsburgh, assigned to an information operations unit. More importantly, I once again felt like I had a true purpose in life. I was part of the full-time support staff for a reserve computer network defense unit. There were about 75 people in the unit, and they were quite an impressive bunch. The battalion commander was literally a robotic scientist, and I was his knuckle-dragging operations officer. While I may not have been on par with these folks as far as computers go, I did understand how to plan and coordinate operations. Between the soldiers' eagerness to support missions and attend training courses, and my aggressiveness in keeping them busy, we did some pretty impressive things during my 2.5 years there. The lessons learned was that one motivated person in the right place at the right time can be a force multiplier when it comes to providing trained and ready soldiers to support combat operations. In the fall of 2005, I became the Chief of the Army Reserve Element for the 1st Information Operations Command at Fort Belvoir. The assignment was fantastic. I greatly enjoyed being back in an active duty environment and supporting the unit by providing reserve component manpower to support the missions both at the 1st IO headquarters and for its teams deployed around the world. From a personal perspective, the assignment provided me opportunities to support a U.S. embassy in a third world country, to support a special operations task force in a combat environment, and to serve as the brigade executive officer. These opportunities represent 3 feathers in my caps that have made me very proud. The lesson that I learned was that I should never doubt my own abilities. I should always be confident in myself, and that confidence will go a long way in carrying me through some extremely demanding times. My final assignment here at the Pentagon has also made me very proud. Whether it was working as the Information Operations Branch Chief or on the incredibly busy cyberspace operations team, I enjoyed helping influence actions and decisions that impact the Army as a whole. Our job isn't always easy, and there are times when we would have to return to the drawing board over and over again, sometimes literally over a single word. The most extreme example is a convention section that took well over 2 years to resolve. It was very frustrating to say the least. When I saw my boss, Colonel Chickley's, return from a meeting with the Chief of Staff of the Army, jump up on a table, throw his arms in the air, and scream touchdown, I knew that we were helping the Army take major steps forward. The lesson learned was that you can eat an elephant, you just have to eat it one bite at a time. One of the most exciting parts of this assignment for me is that even though I haven't been in the office to work for 2 months now, I'm reading announcements in the papers about the very efforts that I worked on. It's a great way to make my exit from the active duty, knowing that I helped shape the future of the Army. Yes, I've had a great career. I've had many highs and a bunch of lows, but I couldn't do it without the love and support and dedication of my daughter Sammy and my wife Mary. So please bear with me for a few more minutes while I give the two most important people in my life more than just Lieutenant Colonel Santini is married to the former Mary Mahoney. They have one daughter, Sammy. My daughter Sammy. Sammy started life as a very typical Army brat. We packed her into the backseat of a Honda Accord and moved her from Olean, New York to Fort Benning, Georgia when she was just 4 days old. Somehow, some way, she got the memo very early that if she wanted to enjoy the best life has to offer, she'd have to take the reins. Amazingly, as a child, she was never afraid to try something new, even if none of her friends were doing it. She always enjoyed being around when I was doing Army stuff, especially when I was teaching ROTC. She was about 4 years old at the time, and I'd have to bring her to the office every once in a while, and she'd just jump in with whatever the cadets were doing. Whether it was yelling at the cadets as they were climbing a hill in a local training area, crawling across a rope bridge as the cadets were training for Ranger Challenge, and this is definitely my proudest moment as a young infantry dad, successfully disassembling and reassembling an M16. As she grew, she continued to chart her own destiny, going on an amazing trip halfway around the world with a student ambassador program, people to people, pitching the first victory in the history of the South County High School softball team, joining color guard and drumline, earning 2 CAPI nominations for set design, or earning 2 degrees in 4 years while at Virginia Tech. Her list of accomplishments go on and on. Undoubtedly, she proved how strong a young woman she is when she decided to move to Seattle after graduation. Naturally, Mary and I were a little shocked when she told us her plan, but we quickly realized she was following in our footsteps. She was doing exactly what Mary had done after graduation by moving to Boston, and she was doing exactly what I had done after graduation by moving to Germany. Do we miss her? Of course we miss her. But we also couldn't be more proud of her. She has grown to be an independent, fun-loving, grab life by the horns type of person who makes other people happy to be around her. Sammy, I realize that being my daughter hasn't always been the easiest cross to bear. Sometimes you've been caught in the crossfire between me and the Army, but please know that you have made both your mother and me so proud. And without a doubt, you are the pride of our lives. My wife, Mary. As many of you know, Mary is a rock. She takes whatever life and the Army has to throw at us and immediately looks for the upside. When life throws us a curveball, she merely kicks me in the butt and says, "It's going to be okay. let's make the best of this. One of her greatest characteristics is an uncanny ability to win over the hearts of others. The best example of this is when I married Mary and returned to Germany after we got married in the States. The problem was that I had already been in Aschaffenburg for 2 years as a bachelor and had become pretty tight with the other single lieutenants. And my day as a carefree single lieutenant dwindled away. One of my best buddies, John Wilson, made it clear to me that even though he had never met her, he wasn't going to like Mary. Really, Mary was stealing me and all our wild and crazy fun from him. When Mary and I flew to Germany after our wedding, Willie picked us up at Frankfurt, took us to the commissary to pick up some essentials, and took us to our apartment. Mary, in her kind-hearted way, asked Willie if he wanted to come in and join us for lunch. That simple act of including him in our first meal together in our apartment immediately broke down all his defenses and made him one of Mary's greatest friends during our year remaining in Germany. This is a simple example, but it exemplifies how she has a natural ability to turn a situation around and make it better, sometimes without even realizing it. Mary has always supported the soldiers and people I work with. From the days in Germany when she'd send me into the office with homemade cookies and muffins for the troops, to arranging Christmas gatherings for the single soldiers when I was a company commander, to giving girlfriend advice to cadets in Oswego, to running the family support groups at both the North Central IOC and 1st IO Command during some pretty tough times, and finally, to making corned beef and biscotti for the team in ODCI. Wherever we've been, she's embraced being an Army wife. Well, I've been relatively lucky during my time in the Army and only deployed 3 times. Mary has endured them with grace. I never had to worry about what was happening at home. I was always able to fully focus on the mission at hand. Mary shies away from the spotlight, but believe me, she is always there, she is always helping out, she is always lending a hand, and she is always cheering me on. In addition to retiring this week, Mary and I will celebrate our 25th anniversary. About a year ago, we tried to figure out what to do to commemorate these 2 significant events, and thus the seeds for Mary and Chewy's excellent invention were sown. As most of you are aware, we just completed our 26-day, 10,000-mile road trip around the 4 corners of the USA. It is an understatement to say that Mary was as excited about this trip from the start as I was. Contrary to what many people predicted, we were not sick of each other by day 26. We thoroughly enjoyed being cooped up in a car, spending so much time together, and seeing our wonderful country for the entire month of April. I tell you this because it reinforces the most important lesson of all, a lesson that I have known for quite a while. This is the lesson that I asked you to pay particular attention to at the beginning of my remarks. The lesson was that by marrying Mary on June 3rd, 1989, I became the luckiest man in the world.